to show you a few basic principles and concepts. I come in about 1/4 of an inch all the way around that paper. I tape it down to this mounting board. One thing you don't see in the video is my board is actually about 1 inch higher up here than it is down here. My paper's tilted just a little bit towards me. And I do that specifically so that if there's any excess water on my paper, it can kind of run down here. Now, if you paint totally flat, especially if you're using a lighter weight paper and it starts to buckle and you're working flat, that water's going to settle in these little valleys. And you have these little puddles of water everywhere. They'll drive you crazy. You need to find a way to get rid of those. The best way to do it is tilt your paper a little bit. That way the water runs down to the bottom. Then you can take a tissue and just wipe it off. That's an obnoxious noise. I'm sorry for that. Okay, you see I've got my paper totally secured with my masking tape. Now we're going to talk about a few watercolor concepts, which you can see a lot of in this video series. And it's important that you understand what they are and how they work and why we're using them. Let me slide this over a little bit so it doesn't cast a shadow on my paper. There we go. We're also going to talk today about negative painting. I'm going to use that same color. That's my Payne's Gray. And my question to you is, how do you paint a white square on a piece of white paper without using white paint? It's a brain twister. The way you do that is you paint around that square like this. Now you got a white square. It's on white paper. We've used no white paint. That's called negative painting. Negative painting it's a concept where you don't actually paint the object. I want to paint a square, but instead of painting a square, I painted around the square with a darker color, a darker value. So it gives you the idea that you have this nice, beautiful white square against a gray background, but there was no white paint used on this. That was all done with negative painting. And negative painting is an acquired skill. You're going to see a lot of that in this video series and subsequent series that I do. Negative painting is a backbone of how I paint. In other words, with watercolors, you cannot paint a light color on top of a dark color if you're using transparent watercolor. It just won't work. I could come in and paint a beautiful yellow on top of this, and the dark color absorbs that yellow and it almost vanishes. So if I want to have a nice, say for example, a nice pretty yellow spot, I would have to put my yellow down first. Then after it dries, I can paint my dark around that yellow, and you get this beautiful yellow against a darker background. That's the reason negative painting is so important. It's something we have to learn how to do. It's an acquired skill. We don't come into the world knowing how to do this stuff. We learn how to do this stuff. And we learn through practice. Practice these techniques. It's actually fun. Just find some spare time, get your paints out, and just use one color. Just practice making negative shapes. Practice doing the square, practice doing a circle, maybe a triangle. Just practice layering shapes, overlapping shapes, making negative shapes. These are the things that are going to take your work to the next level, make you a much more accomplished abstract artist.
If you like what Sterling Edwards shows you in this video, you can join his transformative learning program, Abstract Watercolor Mastery with Sterling Edwards. Embark on a journey to break free from copying references and unleash your creativity, creating unique art that expresses your inner voice. In this program, we cover everything you need to start creating your own abstract artworks in watercolor, from composition ideas to application and creation. Whether you're a beginner or an advanced artist, our step-by-step approach will guide you towards mastering abstract watercolor painting. During the course, you will learn how to find a never-ending supply of interesting designs and create captivating effects and textures. By the end, you'll have all the tools necessary to create and even sell your own astonishing abstract paintings. To join is very easy. Just click the link in the upper right corner of this video or find the link in the description to gain more insights into what you can expect from this event. We'll be thrilled to have you on board.
All right, here's our negative shape right here. That's our negative square. Let's do another square. You notice this dried back a little bit lighter than it looked when it was wet. Watercolors will always dry back about 25, maybe 35% lighter than they look when they're wet. When that happens, don't fret over it. That's what watercolors are supposed to do. So when you put a color down, it's not a bad idea to exaggerate it. Make it darker than you really want it to be, then it'll dry back pretty much where you hoped it would. Let's do another little square here, another negative shape. So that first was negative shape, that's just pure white unpainted paper. And I'll put the Payne's gray around it. Now this Payne's gray is dry, so let's have another square, but this time I want the square to be that Payne's gray color. One of the reasons I didn't paint this really dark, I wanted this to dry back light enough that I can create more shapes within it. So let's try this. Here's another square right here. Let's try this like this. Look at that. There's another square. You notice they're overlapping. So we have two overlapping shapes. Now if I want to get real fancy about it, I can come inside that white square, and this is where negative painting really pays for itself. I'm taking that line right there and coming in like this, putting just a little bit of color. I'm going to take a barely damp little brush and soften that edge I don't need. Now we come in like this. So I come in very lightly, just tickle that edge. Look how we have two overlapping shapes. The gray shape overlaps the white by putting that very, very light little mid-tone gray in there. Look how I create just a whole new shape.